Today we're going to talk about Warriors of God, published by Multi-Man Publishing 2-3 years ago, but it is a very interesting game. It has some very original, if not unique, mechanics, and it's a game that I like a lot. I played in person, I played by email, it works very well by email too, so today I want to talk a little bit about this game. The topic is the wars between France and England during the Middle Ages, and among the leaders that you can use there are John d'Arc and Robin Hood. So even by that fact only, you already know it's gonna be a cool game. This is a general overview of the map. It is printed on paper, but as you can see, it looks pretty good. It really looks like an old map. Also, it's pretty large, so you have a lot of space to play. And as you can see, the areas, the different regions are very clearly delineated. It's a very functional map. It works very well. This is a completely fictional situation, just to give you a sense of how the game works. In the game, you have three types of pieces. You have the nobles, which are these square pieces with all these stats on. Then you have different types of troops, mercenaries, gunners, regular infantry. They're all the same. The only thing that matters is the number. And then you have other types of troops that you can use. And then you have these round markers, which are the control markers, which tell you, well, of course, who is in control of a certain region. A turn will have a variable number of impulses that you will record on this track, and that will change at each turn, and you'll determine it by rolling 2 dice at the beginning of the turn, and then players will use their impulses to move their nobles with their troops around, trying to conquer areas that haven't been controlled yet, and or trying to attack other leaders. At the end of the turn, after all movement is complete, in each region where there are leaders from both armies, there will be a battle. The way you win the game is by scoring more victory points than your opponent, and the way you do that is by controlling areas and by defeating enemy leaders. Combat is very accessible, fast, fun, and it's also sophisticated in that it takes into account the unique abilities and even personalities of the leaders. Leaders have 3 stats. One is the rank, and this number of stars here, which is used in the game for several things, including to determine the size of the army that they can lead, which is 3 times their rank. In this case, Philip II can have an army of 9 troops, and Godfrey of Brittany can have an army of 6. Then you have this other number here in this corner, which is their skill, which is the number of units that they can actually bring into battle effectively, which is different from the size of the army. In this case, Philip can have 9, but can only bring into battle 8 at a time. And Godfrey can have 6, but can only bring into battle 4 units. And the number of units that you can bring into battle is the number of dice that you can roll. Between the army and the skill, we always choose the lowest one. Because, for example, in this case, 4 and 6 is 4, because even though he has 6, he can only lead 4 in the battle. But suppose his army took some hits, well, now he still has the potential of bringing 4, but he only has 2. So he will only roll 2 dice, because the number of troops that you bring in the battle is the number of dice that you roll. The players roll at the same time, and the number to hit is a 6. 1 hit per 6 that you have. However, there is also this other value here, which is the bravery. And usually the number to hit is 6, but you get a bonus on that based on the difference between your bravery and that of your opponent if yours is higher. In this case, for example, Godfrey would be able to roll only 2 dice, but he can hit with a 5 or a 6 because he has a +1 because he's braver. So you see, there are a lot of things to take into account. You might have leaders that are more competent but less brave, or they can be extremely brave but they're not highly ranked, so they have small armies. There's a lot of maneuvering and thinking that you have to do when you're positioning your leaders and bringing them into a certain battle, committing them to a battle. And it's going to be a lot of fun. If you are defending in an area that you control, you don't necessarily have to enter battle. You can also offer siege. The way that works is, well, you declare you're going to do that. Then you add the value of the area, which is a number between 1 and 3. In this case, it would be 1. The bravery of the defending commander, that would be 2. And then just 3 as a standard number. So in this case, you would have a 6. After that, you subtract the bravery of the attacker, and you have the siege number. So 6 minus 1 in this case would be 5. then the attacker rolls one die, only one, and has to roll more than the siege number. In this case, to win the siege, the attacker would need a 6, so not very likely, kind of hard. As opposed to a frontal battle, this leader would have much better chances. However, you can improve your chances in a siege by using gunners, by bringing gunners with you. Each gunner lowers the siege number by 1. In this case, then the siege number goes down from 5 to 3, and then only you need to roll a 4 or more, so from 1 out of 6 you have 50% chances of winning the siege, which will force the other player, well, to have the tough decision whether to enter a battle or to try to offer a siege. And it's interesting because these gunners are just as awesome during sieges as they are virtually useless in regular battles. So there will be choices there that you have to make when you're raising your troops and assigning them, and also throughout the game as the leaders start controlling more areas, sort of like they settle down, then there will be a progression from a more mobile war to a higher number of sieges, and then you will have different troops. So that creates an interesting sense of progression. It does give you the sense that the story or even history is evolving throughout the game. At the end of a turn, there are several things that you need to do and choices you need to make, which really make this part of the game different from just bookkeeping. The first thing is that you raise troops in each area that you control equal to the value of that area, again, between 1 and 3. And here I use standard ones, but you can choose what type of units you raise according to certain rules. Then you will move your units from an area to another if you so wish, as long as all your areas are adjacent. So for example, suppose I want to move all those troops there. But before you can assign your troops to your leaders, or before you can bring in the new leaders for that turn, you have to roll for the random death of each and every of your leaders. The way you do it is you cross-reference the turn that the game is at, suppose we're in turn 6, with the turn that the leader entered the game. For example, which is this number here. So for example, this leader entered the game in turn 2, so we cross-reference 2 and 6, and we get 1 to 4. Then we roll a die for that leader, and well, in this case, the leader survives. He would have died on a 1 to 4. In that case, the leader will be there for another turn. At the end of the other turn, you roll a 1 to 5, and if he miraculously survives, then the following turn, he will definitely die. So in fact, as you can see, these numbers get worse and worse because it simulates how the leaders are growing old. These wars were really long. One of them was called the 100 Years' War for a reason. But the tricky thing is that you can have random death of younger leaders. For example, this guy entered the war in turn 4, suppose we're in turn 6, then he only dies on a 1 or a 2, but of course it can still happen. You don't expect that, you have big plans for him, and then he just dies because of the notoriously bad hygiene of the Middle Ages or whatever else. And there is a level of unpredictability that this system brings in that might be even irritating at the beginning, but then you learn how to factor it in and you see that really it adds a lot. It creates a lot of interesting situations. The thing in Warriors of God that definitely takes the longest to get used to is the random or semi-random death of your leaders at the end of a turn. The first time you play, you might have the sense that the game is completely meaningless, completely random. You cannot do anything because your leaders keep dying when you least expect it. However, after a while, you start factoring that in. You know that the Grim Reaper is always lurking around, even though you don't see that, and then you will know that you have the choice between going for the quick grab that turn, and you can do that, or try to plan for a longer strategy, but your leaders might die before they can actually execute that. Very interesting. And then also it might be that one turn some of your leaders will die and leave an area completely unguarded, and then the enemy leaders will just execute a big push and conquer a lot, but sooner or later the Grim Reaper will catch up with them, those lands will be unguarded, and you will have opportunity to do a comeback. So the game has quite some interesting ways of balancing itself. I like how the two sides play differently. France starts with the advantage of being in the middle of the map, and England will have to come from a side and try to break the blob of lands that France can easily create. But England has some pretty powerful leaders, so that's not an impossible task by any means. I love this game because it gives me a complex gameplay experience without being overcomplicated game. The rulebook is only 16 pages. I don't think it will scare many people away. It is a truly excellent game that surprises you at every turn, forces you to revise and change your strategy as things go, and yet it does reward good gameplay and strategies, just because there's so many factors that you have to take into account that luck itself, by itself, is not enough to determine the absolute outcome of the game. Excellent game, highly recommend it, and if you ever want to play by email, well, send me a line and I'll see what I can do, and if I'm available, I'll probably join you.